What if Komari Vosa never fell to the dark side?
The true war is waged in the hearts of all living things against our own natures, light or dark.
The Jedi, with their damnable sense of overcaution, would tell you love is something to avoid. Thankfully, anyone who's even partially alive knows that's not true. Love doesn't lead to the dark side.
Qui-Gon always spoke very highly of you.
I wish he were still alive. I could use his help right now.
What would happen if the second Padawan to Dooku never fell from grace? What if she wasn't banished from the Jedi Order? And what now? Episode 2. Sand crumbled beneath the pressure of rigid boots alongside twin suns glaring far overhead as Anakin Skywalker arrived on Tatooine, leaving the same spaceport of Mos Espa that he'd seen and frequented so often in his childhood. Gifted with permission and blessings from his master to commission such a trip, so too did his charge, Padme Amidala, seek to join him, each slowly falling for the other, but unable to commit or permit such feelings, especially now with Anakin's nightmares. Familiar with dreams more than most, it's implied but never stated that his deep connection to the Force is their cause. Not just him, but his mother as well, as stated in the Rogue Planet novel. Though her dreams are never elaborated on, they were waking dreams, nightmares of such intensity that they would scare Anakin when he witnessed them as a child. So too would he experience a complex number of dreams and nightmares before even meeting Qui-Gon Jinn in George's timeline. With his first such detailed premonition occurring in the Episode 1 novel, The Ghostling Children, he finds himself repeatedly stuck inside a cube, its sides decorated with writings too ancient to read, separate from Huttese and basic speak altogether, paired with these lavish features, imprinted and miniature pairings of Jedi Knights fought alongside a landscape of volcanoes, hedged beneath a star map that pointed its path towards a nearly too distant moon to spot. While I personally have always believed this cube to be Rakatan in origin, since it was found by Jawas amongst the deserts of Tatooine, it is regrettably only given to us in the form of a novel, so the only pictures we have belong to our imagination. If you're someone with an imagination, this is easy to imagine, but if not, it's very difficult. Thankfully, though, the next novel in the series, Episode 1, The Hunt for Anakin Skywalker, also spends time to delve into this depiction, revealing that the cube itself had no openings, locks, or hinges to be unraveled in any way, but that the sleeping Anakin could feel a presence of evil from deeper within. Repeatedly having this same waking dream, sometimes hearing voices, while other times he himself would be the one speaking, it wasn't until the ending of the novel, and partially skipping 2 novels ahead, do we even find out more on Episode 1, Trouble of Tatooine. And what we find out is that Anakin himself was both the trapped host inside, oozing the presence of evil that he felt, while simultaneously being stuck outside, only able to free himself and stop the nightmares after accepting who he was. His next documented nightmare was during 33 BBY, 1 year before the fated and fabled visit from Master Qui-Gon himself. Indeed, the dream itself, as highlighted in the novel Episode 1, Capture Arwen, he dreamed of a Jedi that strongly resembled Master Qui-Gon. Skipping ahead in the same novel series, Episode 1, Pod Race to Freedom, reinforced Anakin's trust in his own dreamed visions, because in this novel, he realized why he first asked Padme if she was an angel when they met, because he had already dreamed of her before even knowing who she was. The fact never made apparent to the woman that surely would have blushed if she knew. He, who was once a boy, had now grown into a young man, And in that period of growth, only 3 things remained the same: the love for his mother, his trust in his genes, and his faith in Padme. Not faith just in the sense of trust, but believing that the Force itself had brought them together, that his dreams of old solidified their existence, facts made even harder to ignore, while his heart pounded with anxiety. Keeping all of these novels and storylines intact, just as they were in George's timeline, our first major change in this episode will start here, with the reunion of Anakin Skywalker and Watto, originally meeting outside of the latter's shop. However, here, in our timeline, after seeing his former master from far down the street, the young Jedi Padawan would freeze, taken too far back to his days as a slave and unwilling to relive them. Just then, a duo of wives walked by, one with their toddler held aloft, and the other barren with no children of her own to speak of, each talking and detailing the latest gossip around town and news around a recent kidnapping. The Lars homestead was then named, and so too was the victim whom Tusken Raiders had stolen nearly 3 weeks ago, Smee Skywalker. And just this morning, over 30 men were sent out to retrieve her. Only, no one knew how long till they returned. Holding no delay to approach or intervene, the unspoken son of Smee made quick efforts to ask where the homestead was. Even quicker was the answer he received, as one of these women, the one bearing her child, now herself grew worried over her husband. And of course, while all of this is going down, Master Komari Vosa was performing her own isolated mission, answering the cried and called summons of her former master, far off and away on the planet of Geonosis. Landing her ship in a welcoming hangar bay, the clucked and clicked speech of Geonosian engineers would be her first greeting, promptly led inside to a widened and vast hall while her ship itself was refueled and cared for. What happened next was akin to a clash of ambassadors seated at opposing ends to a vast table with wine served from Corellia, one offering praise, pride, and the finest selection of calamari steaks, while the other gave thanks. Yet such niceties only remained coherent for so long, eventually broken down by the discussion of taxation over trade routes, to return home to the Jedi, to fix their problems from within, and avoid further conflict. That was Vosa's proposal, answered in kind by the scraping of Dooku's knife, slicing clean through his meal and into the metal plate below, gulps of wine soon following, encouraging the former Jedi to finally stand while arms reached to cross behind his back. Asking his Padawan that which he was proud to hear her answer to, she already knew that her master would bring up the Battle of Galadriel, well aware that such a dramatic confrontation was very much so his grandest inspiration for leaving the Order. But his next revelation was not known, swiftly spat out so casually that it felt like minutes before she truly perceived their meaning. Telling aloud that Galadriel itself, and indeed the entire Republic, was under the control of something far more sinister. What if I told you that the Galactic Republic was under the control of a Sith Lord? Dooku, his hands crossed and fingers interlaced, was observing fast the shock that spread over his former student's face, and making no effort to mask his own sincerity. I would believe you. Komari answered to an audible gasp of relief and release as the Count before her sunk his shoulders, wishing aloft and aloud that Qui-Gon Jinn himself was still alive, knowing he too would also believe him. And yet, so much harder was his next statement, the uttered belief that if they each joined together, they could defeat this Sith Lord. Furthermore, they could take control of the Republic themselves and fix not just the Jedi, but the galaxy. More and more, did the former master to Komari give that which he desired, named plans and planets, schisms and laws, and with every word made, with every desired outcome made aloud, his student could feel his lust for power, and Vosa could see this envy, this thirst, the same haunting visage left to play on repeat since that snow-laced battle of Galadriel, the prelude to her master's fall from grace, and something that she now knew she couldn't prevent. Making her oath to the Jedi Code aloud, and so too revealing the hidden communicator she wore, having transmitted their entire conversation, the clucked speech of Geonosian guards were quick to follow as 7 of them flew down from the ceiling, blasters within raised and adjacent doors opened, while even more guardsmen flooded the ornate dining hall, muffling the heavy and overbearing sigh of disappointment that poured from the Sith Lord in their presence. Apologies were then made before lightsabers were confiscated, while Vosa was led astray and away towards her waiting cell, taking comfort only in the fact that her isolated droid managed to transmit her message directly to Anakin's ship before the robot itself was destroyed. Although her student would be far too busy to notice or read this message in time, having just arrived at the Lars homestead mere moments before this confrontation, since he left the spaceport in Padme's ship to skim and save hours off of their travel. Expecting a host far greater than what greeted them, Beru Whitesun, the girlfriend to Owen Lars, was alone and aloof, left astray at the very homestead Anakin's mother had called home for several years now. Telling Fass that Owen's mother, their mother, had been taken in the earliest hours when none were around to prevent or protect her, so too did her detailed recalling of Owen's father, Pleag Lars, and the panic he felt for his now estranged wife. Over half the families of Mos Espa had gathered together for this outing, the greatest of challenges for their small town, to find and fix the lost maid, a prospect left more and more daunting as the day continued to pass. During all of this, Anakin would trail behind his speaking host, with legs kept hidden by cloth, while arms were hugged by fabric, eyes adrift not on the woman in front or even behind him, but the grained sand below, because sand was rough, was coarse, and it got everywhere. But more than that, it was everywhere, especially on Tatooine, soon stopping mid-stride to crouch and corral such a handful before letting the same scoop pour free between his fingers. The Force was calling to him. The wind was blowing, and the distant cry of packed banthas was made apparent and loud. He could feel it even here and now, not just his mother's plea for rescue, but danger brewing for Klieg. And this Padawan could not wait for such a thing. He would not wait, explaining to both abound that which he felt, and wasting no delay to take the spare speeder offered to him, save the worried-stricken embrace of Padme as she charged him. He wouldn't be long. He would be back before dinner. He would bring every missing member home, and he would save his mother, speaking to convince not just those around him, but mostly and mainly himself. From here, the journey of Anakin Skywalker across the Jundland Waste and the Dune Sea would proceed exactly as it did in George's timeline. Similar here, not knowing that his own master's life was also on the line, his mother remained his sole focus. Power cells were then pushed to their limits, as the speed he reached was triggered with precautionary sirens and a screen of red over his holo display, ignored without wasting even a second to glance at it, as speed was pressed even further. Farther beyond did he continue to go, blaring fast and furious, as if he was using hyperspace to travel the dunes beneath him, stopping not to ask for directions or clues, and instead closing his eyes to feel the path ahead. The Force would lead him to his desired outcome, over canyons of rock and beneath arches of sandstone, soaring like a rocket, masked and clad in the very robes so common to his order, they themselves resembled a flag of brown, waving amidst a torrent. For hours this would go by, baked beneath the twin suns as they edged closer and closer to the far-off horizon beyond, all until a cloud of dust was spotted, dozens of speeders lining it and led by a pair of men in front of them. Only then did Anakin's perception shoot past, glimmering that which none of them could notice or see. A wire stretched in front and far, spread from canyon to canyon, yet laced in the very grains of sand that surrounded them. Then and there would this student to Komari make his final push on the speeder that bore him, bearing forward while using the force to boost him, sailing and surging until he bore through and around those that used to be beyond him. Ahead of them all now, his speeder launched itself while he also leapt free, further punching the air with bursts of the force, each and every one of which managed to add ample aid and thrust among his now barreling projectile. Blasting straight through the trap designed to slay and slice, Owen knew not who he was thanking as he sped by, joined in an instant as Anakin took the chance to leap aboard his speeder with a burst of force speed. Tusken Raiders then made their own presence known, howling aloud before shooting shots from their embedded positions on the ridgeline, seeking to strike settlers as an aura of azure ignited in their defense, steady and sizzling, directing anyone and everyone to follow his instructed lead. None dare argue as their crowded passage was turned to the east, Anakin waving his lightsaber not just as a bastion of defense and protection, but a bannered flag, vibrant and glowing as he led their host forth. Meanwhile, the intended transmission for Anakin was sent, showing the well-deserved trust that Master Vosa placed in her droid, but so too was the skill of the agent that intercepted and destroyed it, Severance Tan. Moreover, this force-imbued Chiss general from Wild Space reported the contents of such a message directly to the Master, Darth Tyrannus, whom, while in the middle of a meeting with the Dark Lord, Darth Sidious himself, could not hide. Not behind the betrayal he planned, the duo he offered to create with his former Padawan, and the deal to strike down the figure in hologram form before him now, carried by clawed pairs of mechanical limbs clanking the ground with each step. And so an ultimatum was created, then and there, for the fallen Jedi turned Sith Lord, his last and most final of chances to turn to the dark side, to turn tail into the prison wing and strike down his own Padawan, or Darth Sidious would kill both him and her, personally, a heavy burden to internally bear, but one he knew must be wrought, least with his malformed sense of honor. Dooku freed Komari first, before returning the same sabers he gifted so many years ago. And once again, he asked her to join him. The Jedi were failed, fleeting and flawed, not just since the days of Galadriel, but since the very inception of Darth Sidious himself. Only one could be saved in the eyes of Count Dooku, the same woman he was pleading with right now. But words weren't his reception. Instead, it was the twin eruption of lightsabers. The very same given not just moments ago, but years since past, when last they met, standing as friends upon the exterior steps to the Jedi Temple, each of them now far gone and drawing to form stances. It's not too late. Forget this. Let us return home, together. Marked and pitched exertions of reprieve were called and audibly cried, accepting not that it was already too late for her master, already too steeped in the dark side, and already too far gone.